Hey everybody, Mac here. Welcome back to the show. What we have for you today is another complete wave of McFarlane DC Multiverse figures. This is the the Justice League Endless Winter. And Endless Winter was a limited series story run just before Death Metal came out. So this series goes back, I want to say it's like a year and a half, 2 years at this point. I honestly can't remember, but I remember really liking the story. I actually liked it better than Death Metal, and I kind of wish they would have made a bigger event out of Endless Winter. I thought it had a lot of potential. I really liked the story elements they brought to it. I liked the characters they used, and I liked the history that it gave Black Adam, Swamp Thing, and Hippolyta. So what we have are 4 of the characters from the Justice League in some pretty unique looks, and also a brand new figure as of this line with Black Adam, Batman. We got Green Lantern back there, and Wonder Woman in some Arctic gear. And I got these all from Target, and I'm sure you can tell by the barcodes that are plastered on the window box of each box. And I know people get upset when Target does this, and they did it on every one of mine, but this is the easiest part to take a sticker off of. If you're going to be an inbox collector and you peel the sticker off and there's some gunk left behind, you get some Gooby gone, and that comes off right away. It's so much easier than trying to take it off of a piece of cardboard and maybe peeling off some of the image. And while we have this flipped around, let's take a look at the image. That all of the boxes are pretty much the same. That we have this big picture of the collect-to-build figure, which is the Frost King. We see the different pieces that come with the different figures, and we see how it all goes together. And down here we got Wonder Woman, Batman, Green Lantern, and Black Adam. On the side, we have a window. Up front, we have the very big window. Up top, more window. DC Multiverse, figure name, picture of the collect-to-build. And on this side, name of the figure and the series that it is part of. Our standard fare for the McFarlane DC Multiverse line. No frills to the box. Let's what's inside speak for itself. Also, before we go on, I know when I did the Dark Knight Returns series, things got really drawn out, a little long-winded. I'm going to try and cut that down. Also, I'm going to put timestamps in the description below, like I did with the Dark Knight Returns, so that if you just want to skip to a certain figure, you can do that. So without further ado, let's get these open, and let's see which one we're going to start with first, with the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Endless Winter Wave. Okay, and we're going to start first with John Stewart, the Green Lantern, because I feel like he's pretty much the most basic figure of the set. That I don't have any of the Green Lanterns yet. I don't have the John Stewart Green Lantern, but I'm pretty sure this is a complete reuse of the Green Lantern that already exists. Plus, he's not wearing like any snow gear or anything. So let's get this one open and take a look at him. Okay, out of the box, we see that John is 7 1/8 to the top of his head. Alright, starting at the top and working our way down, we see that the head will do a complete 360 spin. He has some really good tilt from side to side. He can look up really well, which is good for a flying character, and he can look down pretty well. He can bury the chin. His arm will do a complete 360. He has a butterfly hinge in the shoulder. Shoulders will come up past 90. He has a bicep swivel. He has double jointed elbows that lets them fold in really well. He has the swivel hinge swivel wrists of McFarlane's that they'll swivel all the way around, and then they'll go up and down, or you can turn them and do that, and now they go in and out. It's magic. Now, at the waist, he does have some pretty good crunch at this waist. Usually this is where McFarlane figures hurt a lot. But first he has this ab crunch where you can get some swivel right there, but he also has a waist twist as well. At the crunch, he can crunch forward, not too bad, but he can really crunch back. But now that you put the waist into the factor, he can get forward a lot more. Let's get his arm out of there. He can go forward a lot more, and he can come back a lot more. He also has some really good side-to-side movement right there that I'm pretty sure underneath this rubber, because this is a very soft rubber, as you can see, is just a ball joint. Now, his trunks are also rubber too down in here, so his legs can really come up. They can go back. They come out to the side not so well. And he has that hidden hip swivel right there that lets the leg move in and out. The double jointed knees doesn't quite get there, but it's still decent. ankle rocks back, ankle rocks forward. You get some side to side, and some toe articulation. Now, not having any of the other John Stewart Green Lantern figures, I would not be surprised if this body is complete reuse from previous versions of this figure. However, I can't say to it one way or another because this is actually my first Green Lantern that I've gotten from McFarlane. Whether it's Hal, whether it's John, I think those are the only two they've made, unless you count Dawnbreaker. I'd really like to see them do Alan Scott. I would really love to get that one. Maybe they'll do like a Justice Society wave at some point. Who knows? But I like this really deep, dark black and this emerald, almost metallic looking green. I think they did a really good job on this. Now, I know I've seen other versions of John Stewart that I think he has some sort of piece that fits down over his chest, but if it looks this good, I wouldn't want to cover it up. I really like, looks like he has something that you can plug into there in some other version of John Stewart. I know one of the lanterns has a back jetpack too. I can't remember. But the sculpt on this, while it's very basic, it works for this character. That this is more of a uniform than a costume. I even like the scalloping on the boots and how those look down here. Then you have the bracers. The only thing I wish they would have done different with these is that the ball joints for the wrists would have been painted this metallic green or this emerald green instead of being the black ball joints in there. And the skin tone on him, I think, is very well done too. He has this nice fade right here. But I can't tell if the eyes are supposed to be looking to the side or if they're supposed to be looking straight. Because this one seems to be in a little bit more than this one, but they both look like they're looking straight ahead. So I can't tell if this is at the point where Todd started getting his obsession with side-eye figures, or if that's just the paint app is a little off on it. But other than that, like the head detail on here, the coloring of the lips, the brows, the fade of the hair, everything on the head sculpt I feel is very well done. Not much to the body, but it's actually really nice in its simplicity. For accessories, John comes with these twin sabers made of a translucent green that are supposed to be his constructs. And at first I was wondering why did they just go with these twin sabers for the constructs. And truthfully, this seems more like a Hal thing. But I also know that if you do have the other Green Lantern figures, then these just finish off. These just add to the collection because I believe each Green Lantern figure comes with a different set of constructs for it, that once you have all the Green Lantern figures, you got a lot to pick from about how you want to pose your lanterns with what constructs. Like all McFarlane Multiverse figures, John comes with a figure stand that's just a black disc with the DC logo tampoed on it. Would have been nice to get him a flight stand, though. And he comes with his own trading card, which surprisingly, this has comic art on it because I thought they had started getting into just having the toy, having promotional images of the toy be the image on the card. And then in the back, we have a little bit of a bio for John. And then the two collect-to-build pieces that he comes with is the Frost King's head, which is a great-looking headpiece. Look at that. I like the translucent greenish-blue horns up there. And just that expression on his face and the detail work and the paint app on the face looks really good. I really like that. I actually can't wait to get this one together. And then we also have his cape that is a very, very heavy piece of rubber that it looks like it's just going to peg into his back right here. I wish they would have painted this a different color, painted the fur a different color, like either a brown or a white or something, just to give it a little bit more color. We'll have to wait and see how it looks once we put it on him, but I would like to have seen the fur painted up. And the next one we're going to dive into is Batman, because this one is just ridiculous. All right, friends, here we go. Arctic Attack Batman out of his box. And before we go any further, let me just state that all of my issues with this design, this is not McFarlane's fault. He's actually done a fairly good representation of what was in the comic. The issue is DC approved this design, which is just ridiculous. I mean, I understand. Batman's just a dude. Of course, he's going to need some sort of protective gear when he's in the Arctic. But we've seen him in situations like that before, and it's never been anything this ridiculous. And I'll show you what I mean when we bring him closer to the camera. But for now, let's just put the tape measure to him. Let's see how he measures up. And he comes in at just 7 inches tall to the top of his head. Just shy of 7 1/4 to the top of his ears. All right, now, first of all, just taking a look at him, this is the design for him, and be honest, who wore it better? All right, so let's bring him closer, and we're going to look at the articulation. And his head will do a full 360 spin. It gets hung up on his collar. He can't really look up. He can kind of look down, and there's not a whole lot of tilt side to side. Now, his shoulder pads here are a soft rubber so that you can bring his arms up past 90 and they'll kind of get out of the way. They'll just push up so you won't have an issue there. But when you try to do a full 360, they kind of do hang up the movement, but luckily, his arms don't come down all the way, so it's no big deal anyway. He has a bicep swivel right there. He has a little bit of a butterfly joint in there, but the coat really hampers its usefulness. He has double jointed arms, double jointed elbows with some really good travel on there. And he has McFarlane's swivel hinge swivel wrists that they'll pivot. They'll go up and down, or you can spin them, bring them in, and they'll come in and out. Now, even though they can get all that range of movement, it is worth noting that the cuffs of his coat right here sort of interfere with his ability to move his wrists up and down or even out, but they can come in fairly well. Now, he does have an ab cut right here for a little bit of twist, but with his big Horkin coat on, it really hampers his mobility. There's really not a whole lot of crunch. He can't go back, and the twist that you get is more at the waist because he does have a waist cut that is hidden by the belt. I don't know if you can see down in there. It's on a bit of a ball joint that he can get some side to side, but once again, the coat is really getting in the way of things. And it doesn't do much more for him leaning forward, but he can kind of get a good look leaning back. So the coat really hampers any kind of torso movement for him. As well, the coat also kind of interferes with his legs because even though it's split up the back here, this is still some really heavy rubber to be having hanging off the sides. So his legs can come forward, his legs can go back, but as far as coming out to the side, they would be able to get up to a full 90, but the coat is going to weigh them down. And even when you try and get him into like some deep crouching poses, the weight of the coat still compresses his legs together. Now he does have double jointed legs, double jointed knees, get out of the way, where because he's so thick, they really can't do anything except come up to about 90 anyway. He has the hip swivel. Oops. And that just came off. He has the hip swivel that's hidden underneath the coat. Ankles rock back, ankles rock forward, forward-facing pin for rocker, toe articulation. So part of the biggest problem with this whole figure as far as articulation goes, for once, it's not really an issue that I have with McFarlane's design getting in the way of the articulation. It is DC's design getting in the way because of this big, stupid coat. So, and that brings us to sculpt and paint. And that is pretty much usually where McFarlane shines, especially in the paint. And I really like how they use this translucent red for his visor. I dig the head. I dig this fully enclosed mask that's protecting him. And if you look closely, you can even see sort of like vent holes in the side for breathing. So I really like the idea that like he's wearing this full-faced cowl with tinted goggles, great for the snow, great for scene definition. If you ski, you understand like what the purpose of having these tinted goggles is. And the coat even of itself, the coat is fairly well done. It's textured very nicely, has a little bit more of a shine than the rest of the body does, the rest of the figure does, and I really like that, and I like the detail in the fur right here, and it's not perfectly white, it's a little grayed like it's seen some action and some wear. And I even like how it bunches in the back right here. And the utility belt, for the most part, isn't too bad either. It's rubber, but it's also attached to the coat, so it's not going to move around. So it's not going to either spin or shift or do anything like that. But the fact that he's wearing the coat is stupid. This would be the least practical thing to wear when you're fighting supervillains. This would hamper your movement, it would get in the way, worse than a cape, keeping it bunched together, would even start to limit your arm movement. Like, this is just a bad design altogether. Now, when you get underneath the coat, he has his bat symbol. You can see there's a little bit of like a padded, maybe insulated chest piece, torso piece that he's wearing. But you want to talk about branding. He has two bats on here. He has one on his chest and he has one on his abs right there. I don't know if you can see that. But it's like, we get it, Bruce. It's your brand. That's cool. I'm amazed he doesn't have a big bat across the back of his shoulders right here. Or on the shoulder pads. I do like the metal bracers, sort of like a la Batman Begins, where like he could use those either as weapons or even for like clinging on to ice drifts, things like that. You could dig them into the ice and just hold on. I like that. That, and then we get down to the legs, which the legs are all fairly standard, or they're kind of boring, has the same texture as the coat, but I do like the detail work on the knee pads and the armored boots. For accessories, Batman comes with a lot of the standards from McFarlane, that we get this trading card here with a nice image of our hero figure up top, and then we have a bio on back, which at this point, it can't really say too much different. How many more different types of bios can we have based on Batman after all of the figures that we've received for him? Also, like all McFarlane figures, we got a figure stand with Batman, and he has the DC logo tampoed on the front. And finally, one of the last things we got with Bruce is this Batarang right here, and I really like this. This is a tech Batarang, it looks like, because he has these red sensor things on either side of it, and I think this is cool. This is a nice deviation from the normal types of Batarangs that we usually get with these figures, but honestly, looking at this now, I can't remember if this was a Batarang or if it was some sort of tracking device that Bruce had. It's been maybe about a year since I read the Endless Winter series. I remember him having this. I don't remember what it is, though, but you could use it as either like a self-tracking Batarang or just a tracking device or something, but it's always cool to get like little pieces of tech with Batman instead of just our standard, grappling guns and Batarangs. All right, up next, we have Aquaman. No, you didn't miss anything at the beginning, but between the start of filming this video and now, Aquaman came in the mail separate from the rest of the wave. See, he doesn't have a Build-A-Figure or a collect-a-build piece for the Frost King, but as you can see, he is still Justice League Endless Winter. So even though he came separate and came from a different location, actually, we're going to take a look at him now. So let's get Arthur out of the packaging. To the top of his head, Aquaman is 7 inches tall. Okay, starting at the top and working our way down, we're going to take a look at Arthur's articulation here. That his head, despite this long mane of hair, will do a full 360 spin. He doesn't have a whole lot of tilt. He actually gets more tilt this way than he does that way. He can't look up. The joint won't let him and his hair won't let him, but he can look down. He can bury the chin right there. All right, so his arms will do a full 360 spin. He has a butterfly joint in the shoulder, but I don't know if you can hear that clicking. It gets hung up, and I don't know if it's getting hung up on the scales of the sculpt or not, but it moves a little bit stiffer than some of the other ones do. His arms will come up past 90. He has a bicep swivel. He has double jointed elbows with some really good travel to them. He has the swivel hinge swivel wrists that they can go in and out. You can spin them, or you can do this, and then they'll go up and down. I really love these wrists that McFarlane has. Now, He has the ab cut again, and it's a little bit more functional than it is on some of the other figures McFarlane puts out. It's a little stiff, but I think that's because of just how textured the sculpt is for his torso, that it's definitely rubbing against each other, and you don't want to break anything, but he can really crank back in a crunch. He can go forward a little bit, not much, but man, can he really get back there. He also has a ball joint at the waist, so he can do a waist twist. He has tilt side to side, and then when you combine the ball joint with the ab crunch, he can really get back, which gives for some really good swimming poses for our Aquaman. And he can move forward a little bit more, but you'll start to see the gap in his shorts in the back. Now his legs will come up to the side. They'll go to 90, but they'll want to drop back down. The rubber of his trunks is pushing down on it. He has that hip swivel right there, that he actually has some of the best out of the line. He has double jointed knees that if it wasn't for the fins, his fin right here, they would probably close in on each other, but he does have this and that stops him. And he has ankles rock back, ankles rock forward, forward facing pin for some rock, and he has his toe articulation. Now looking at the sculpt and the paint app of our Aquaman, he's a very basic looking figure, much like our Green Lantern figure was, but he still looks good. Sometimes the simplest looks are some of the best looks. First of all, let's get this out of the way. Look at his eyes. He's got that side eye going on, that he's not only looking to the side, he kind of looks like he's looking up a little bit. So that, like, let's see, to the side, and then up, maybe right about there-ish. So, yeah, I do like the arched eyebrow, but especially this one, it's very, very obvious he's looking off to the side. I wish he was looking forward, especially because he has this great sculpt right here. I think his face portrait is fantastic. You can see the little whiskers on the sides on his chops over here. You got the whiskers in his beard and in his mustache, the detailing in there, a little bit of wash to make everything stand out. Like, this whole face portrait right here is fantastic. It's just missing the eyes looking forward. He has this honey blonde sweeping mane of hair right here too that's kind of lifted up, like it's floating in water a little bit, kind of like if you have The Drowned, how hers is kind of up. But I really like the look of this. It could be windblown, it could be floating in the water. It looks really good. The sculpt of his torso is fantastic as well. All of these individual little scales sculpted in right there. That there's really not a smooth spot in the sculpt except where the trenching takes place. Even on the back, he has all of these scales sculpted in over the muscles, over the armor he's wearing. I think it looks great, along with the golden V collar right here. I also like how there's two tones going on with his armor. How it looks like it was molded in orange plastic, but then washed over with like a bright yellow or gold paint to really make everything shine and pop and stand out. You have a gold belt going on down here around his trunks that it rides up high on his hip and then comes back down. This looks fantastic. I really like the green that they have. It's almost at first glance, it looks like it might have been the same shade as Green Lantern, but this is much less metallic than Green Lantern. So this shade of green stands off on its own. His legs are very basic. His legs are just legs with the fin in back, but that's the costume. That's what Aquaman looks like. All right, I like how he has the little Atlantean symbol carved, sculpted onto the front. There's no paint splash on any of this, which is fantastic. On the belt, it would have been very easy to miss a mark, especially right in here. His trunks, like I said during the articulation, are a very soft rubber, and we've seen this before where he makes it, McFarlane Toys makes a soft rubber so the legs can come up. The only thing you have to watch is that over time, if that starts to dry, it may start to crack and eventually rip. So holding exaggerated poses for long periods of time, if he's going to be on your shelf, may not be the best idea. I do appreciate that it can get out of the way so that the legs can really get some movement, but just be aware that that could be a rip point for you. Going over his accessories, Arthur comes with his figure stand. He also comes with his character card, and you have the action figure in the image with a digital backdrop there, and we have his bio on the back. And finally, Arthur comes with his trident. And what I love about this trident is that so far we've had the Drowned and we've had the Justice League Aquaman. None of the tridents have been the same. He hasn't skimped on that. And I really like this trident. I like the gold. I like the shape of it. This is very comic book. Mine's a little bent. It came bent out of the packaging, but with some heat, we'll be able to reshape that. One thing I really like about this, and I didn't notice it until I got out of the package, if you look at it, it looks like the trident from the Aquaman movie. The only thing that it's missing is the cross piece right here to get his hand up on it, and he's missing another spear tip on the bottom here because it had that secondary weapon option on the bottom in the movie. But other than that, like, I think it looks fantastic. This is a little bit of a tip, but it's not nearly as pronounced a spear tip as the trident tines up here. Like, I really like the look of this once I get it bent back into shape, and you can see that it has a hand guard right here, that this fits very easily into Arthur's hand right there. Whoop, slid out. Fits very easily into Arthur's hand so that he can hold his trident. And truthfully, I love how brightly colored this whole thing is. I love how the golds match. Everything looks good. Like, this is a very aesthetically pleasing color palette that just works for him. As a matter of fact, I was thinking, I don't have any of the Justice League figures because I'm not really big on that muted dark brown blah color palette, especially for Aquaman, where he's more brown than gold. But I was thinking of getting that and popping this head off and maybe putting the Momoa head on here and seeing how that looks, because this right here, the colors, the look, the trident, everything, this is him coming out of the cave after getting the trident in the movie, when he made that hero pose, when he planted the trident and he was standing there in full armor. This would look fantastic. I wonder how the Momoa head would look on there. I just think, I don't know, it might be too dark as well. All right, next up we have Diana, the Wonder Woman herself. All right, out of the box, Diana is 7 inches tall to the top of her head, but 7¼ to the top of her hair. So she may seem bigger than some of the other figures once we get them all lined up, but that's mostly going to be in this top braid that she has right here. Okay, we're going to go out of order, and we're going to do the sculpt and paint apps on this one first, because that's the part about this that I like the most. First of all, this is going to sound really corny, but, like, Diana is kind of like the Blake Lively of the Justice League, really. I mean, she's always looking good. She's always on point. Like, all of her costumes, all of her alternate looks, always look so good. And this winter gear is nothing short of that. I even like how they were able to maintain her color scheme throughout the whole thing. Like, this long drape that's coming down, this long skirt that's coming down from her waist is red. The bodysuit is mostly blue. She has the red and the gold on the boots. The only thing she's missing, and I was kind of upset about, not upset, but I was kind of missing them in the comic too, is that her bracers are gone and she's wearing these gloves in place of them. But we have the eagle up front in its gold with the red breastplate. Even the tiara has sort of turned into this full, I forget what the name of this actually is, but this full head crown right here. I really, really like the face sculpt, the face portrait for this one. It's a very good neutral look for her. She's looking forward. I like the detail in the eyes. I like the coloring of the lips, how you have them mostly red, but they're outlined in black right there. I don't know if that's showing up on camera, but this all looks very good. And then she has this long single braid that starts here at the top of her head and comes all the way down and around. Now, out of the packaging, this flares out a little bit, but with some heat and some bending back, we'll be able to get that to lay closer to her shoulder or even lay across her chest, however we want to have it. But this is nothing. This can be taken care of. We have the lasso of truth hanging off down here, but it does not come off. It's glued on there, which that's kind of a bummer for me. I may actually try to change this to cut it off and see if I can get it so that it can be removed, because even though we don't get a lasso with her, we've had Wonder Woman figures from McFarlane, especially the Wonder Woman 84 figure, where we have a lasso that we could set her up with a lasso as well if we wanted to. On the back, she has this great cape, which I loved in the comic too. This whole thing looks fantastic. And the only thing I wish this would have had was a bit of a wash, just to make the detail in the fur stand out a little bit more. I mean, it looks good, but some kind of wash to make it stand out, I think, would have been much better. Now, she has her sheath on here, too, that if you take this big thing, and first of all, this is glued in place, so it's not going to come off easily if you wanted to try and get it off. But her sheath for her sword, which we'll take a look at the sword in a minute, is just pegged into her back, and you can see her back peg right there. Okay, so if you wanted to pose her without this, or if you had other swords, like, I don't know, maybe something from The Witcher or something, that you wanted to give her a bigger blade, she would be able to accommodate that. And the cape does conform and leaves room for her scabbard back here. Now, all in all, you can see right here where the lasso is hanging down, and these straps are just painted, or not even painted, but they're molded in the same red as the rest of the skirt, as are these flaps, these leather flaps that are coming down on the back. Now, up here, where the cape is supposed to clasp together, this is done really well. Where we have this painted brown, this silver clasp right here, and against the blue, it really stands out. I'm kind of wishing they would have done the same thing down here, is touch this up with some brown, just to give it like another little bit of color to offset that whole thing. But this is very rubber right in here. And when I first pulled her out and I saw that, I thought they were going to use some of the same techniques that they use on the Witcher figures, that she would have some real good ab movement. My hopes and dreams for that were dashed, and we'll see that once we look at her articulation. But going back down to the boots, I also like just this shading of blue. I like this shade of blue that they used. It's not real dark. It stands out. It looks good with the whole palette. I like the scalloped knee pads right here. And once again, like, we know this is based off of the comics, so they did a good job on this one. That knee pad is a little off center, I just realized. Well, that's a bummer. Are they both like that? Nope. Looks like just the one. Just this one isn't centered properly. But all in all, I'm liking this. And I even like, see, she even has this like little silver clasp right here holding her braid together. Now down here we have some more fur along the bottom of her skirt that it would have been cool if that would have been painted brown too, to match up with the mane of the cape. Just some little touch-up paint on this whole thing, I think, would have just made it really stand out, really pop. I don't have any overspray on mine. Even the red star on her crown right here is hit fairly well. The eyes are both looking forward. They're not crossed. They're both looking straight ahead, same direction. Really like that. As I said, I like the detail work that they did on the face, and right here on the silver clasp or the brown straps, there's no overspray down there as well. I just noticed there's a little bit of a missed spot up here on the breastplate, but that's up top. You may not see that too much. Man, that whole thing is cracked right in there. I just realized. That's my flaw. That's the flaw of my figure. But if that's the only thing, then I can handle that. But now we get to the articulation, and she can do a full 360 head spin. She has a little bit of tilt side to side. She can't really look up, mainly because of the cape and the ponytail, that even if you like tuck the ponytail back, she really doesn't get a good up look. She can look down though, she can bury the chin. Now, her arms will come up past 90, and she has a butterfly joint in there. They'll do a full 360 spin. She has a bicep swivel. She has double jointed elbows on a female figure. What will the elders say? She has swivel hinge swivel wrists that they'll go, what is this set for? They'll go up and down, then you can turn them, and they'll go in and out. Now you'll notice I've been showing it all with this arm, because with this arm, you have to contend with the weight of the cape. And once again, that's a design of the comic. There's really not much he could have done about that. At least the arm can come forward, but going up and out to the side, you can see it's fighting against the cape. It would have been cool if there might have been a slit in there. I don't know, that might have actually looked too ugly. It's hard to tell. Like, it's hard to tell which one was the right call, whether to make it solid or to put a slit in it so the arm could move. Luckily, this is her sword arm, though, so this is the one that will have to have all of the movement. Now we get down to the waist, and there's not a whole lot going on, but you can see that it is really wonky. And here's what I think happened. When I lifted the cape and I took the scabbard off, you may have noticed this the first time we looked back here, that you can see the back piece right here is not connected. There seems to be a little clip right there, but there's nothing down here. That's just all soft rubber, and you can see the dumbbell joint inside. The problem is that it's connected up front right here, so you really can't turn it because this is all one piece, and there's a cut back here, but it doesn't follow through up front. Like, I feel like there should have been a cut under her breast line right here or something, but when you try and turn the waist, you get that. When you try and crank forward, it doesn't really want to go, that it's fighting against this and the weight of the cape. And if you try and crank back, it doesn't really do much either. There's also no waist twist right here. So for all intents and purposes, she's basically immovable from the torso up, from the waistline up. Because even if you do try to turn, you see it gets real ugly. And I'm also worried that soft rubber will start to rip. So, I don't know. You can take the chance if you want to, but as is coming out of the packaging, Diana's not going to have much room for movement in the torso. Now down here, her legs will come up. They'll go back, but you're also fighting against the skirting and the cape as well. And the skirting will come up, so the legs will come up, and she would be able to get them up to 90, but the weight of this is going to weigh them down, just like we saw with, Batman. She has the hip swivel in here. It's not a whole lot of travel right there. She has double jointed knees that she can really crank back on that. And ankles rock back, ankles rock forward a bit, little bit of side to side rocker, and we have toe articulation right there. And just another issue with the sculpting, they put her in these high wedge sandals, and I don't get why. Just put her in flat boots. This doesn't make any sense. I wish they would get away from doing her feet like this and just give her flats. For accessories, Diana comes with her figure stand. She also comes with her character card, which, much like Batman and Aquaman, it's the combination of a photo of the figure with some digital background in there. And also she has her bio on the back. And finally, she comes with her sword. And the sword isn't anything great. We've seen a lot of swords with Diana over the past couple figures. This one is a thicker plastic, so even though that it bends, it's not going to be real flimsy and moldable like the Wonder Woman Last Night on Earth sword was. If you remember, that one was very long and it was paper thin, so it's never going to be able to hold shape for very long. But I do like the sculpt of the pommel on the hilt right here. You can see the wraps. Once again, this would have been cool to see the wraps maybe painted brown, just to throw some color against the gold, really make the gold stand out. And I don't know about anybody else, but I get some serious Conan the Barbarian vibes from this hilt. Like the first movie with Arnold in it from the 80s, if you've seen it. Like, I feel like this is modeled after the sword hilt of Conan's father. I really like the look of it. Now, this will fit very easily into her hand. It's a little bit bigger than her hand, but she does get a very good grip on it. You can see she's not going to lose it. And also, it fits very well into her sheath back here. There we go. I don't know why McFarlane gets caught up in these open sheaths. That, like, on the back they're closed. It doesn't go all the way down, by the way. I just noticed that. Then on the back they're closed, but up front, like facing the figure, they're still open. I don't know what the logic or the reasoning is behind that, but I kind of wish that was closed off, especially up here over her shoulder. And finally, the collectible piece that Diana comes with is the Frost King's torso. And look at this big chunky thing. This thing is big. This is going to look cool. See, we have the torso right here next to Diana herself. That's a big piece of torso. You can see up top we're going to have a ball joint for the head, so hopefully there will be some decent movement in the head, some decent articulation up there. The arm sockets are very deep. And underneath, this is actually a very soft, pliable rubber, as well as the front skirt right here. And you can see the pegs where his legs are going to go, that he can really get the legs up to the sides, and they're going to have some great travel forward and backwards. So I am looking forward to putting this guy together. I like the little, I don't know if that's supposed to be like a demon head, or if that's like a horned bear. I think that's what that is. I think that's a horned bear. I really like that. I really like that emblem on his belt. I like the detail. You can see the buckles on the belt, the clasps on there. I think this is really good. I just noticed there's some, is that overspray or what is that? Oh, whatever that is, I'll be able to get that off. All right. But this whole thing looks good. And I do like how there's some white down here on the tassels. I don't know why they stopped painting halfway around. If they were going for a dirty, aged look, or if it's supposed to be this color and the idea is that this is frost-tipped. I don't know. I kind of wish they would have carried that around all the way to the back on both sides. And finally, of course, we come to Black Adam, the man who is surging in popularity in DC Comics right now. So popular, in fact, that he has his own movie coming out starring The Rock. And let me just say, while I have always liked Black Adam, I am really not a fan of turning him into this anti-hero. I liked him better as a villain. I mean, he was just on the Justice League, for goodness sakes, and it looks like he's going to play a pivotal part for the heroes in Dark Crisis. And I don't know, I just think they should have left him a villain. That's my own take on it, but let's get Black Adam out of the box and let's take a look at him. Okay, to the top of his head, Black Adam measures 7 inches tall. And looking at the articulation, now we're going to start at the top and work our way down, that his head will do a full 360 spin. There's some decent tilt going on here. He can't really look up. He can look up, but not very much. He can kind of look down, bury the chin. His arms will do a full 360 spin. He has that butterfly joint right there at the shoulder. The shoulder will come up way past 90. He has a bicep swivel that's a little tight right now. Double jointed elbows. Swivel hinge swivel for the wrists. So he can do that, he can do that, and he can do that. Only comes with closed fists. Now he does have an ab cut in here that he can do some good twisting. He can crank back. He can crunch forward. But then he also has the waist twist, the joint, a ball joint at the waist that he can go from side to side. And then he can really crank back. And he can kind of crunch forward. And he also gets some side to side rock. All right. Now the legs, his hip movement isn't great. As a matter of fact, it's almost non-existent. It's really disappointing. He has nothing covering him up, but this is like some of the worst hip movement of the line. His legs will come up to there. His legs will go forward. Getting caught up on the rubber. Now he has these very soft rubber trunks right here that will tend to get out of the way, but they could also start to stretch and rip. His leg will go back. He has double jointed knees with some really good closure right there. Oops. And he has ankles. The boots kind of get in the way. Ankles will rock back. Ankles will rock forward. They'll twist. Little bit of side-to-side rock. And our toe articulation. Now looking at the sculpt and the paint app, much like Wonder Woman's, I really like his face portrait right here. I think this is a very well sculpted face portrait. I think the coloring, especially around the eyes, really adds some depth, really adds some character to it. This is a very good neutral face. This is a very intense face, which it's Black Adam. Of course it's going to be intense. Even has his Grandpa Munster's widow peak right there, which I appreciate. Now, his ears are back to being rounded. I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, maybe even to the mid 90s, that they had kind of they started to point his ears and made him look like, I don't know, like a really buff elf or a Vulcan or a Romulan or something. I don't know exactly what they were going for, but I remember his ears were pointed for a while. Now, the lightning bolt down here on his chest, this is the one thing that I think looks kind of ridiculous, that because it's a separate piece, they didn't mold it or paint it to the torso so that whenever he turns, the lightning bolt doesn't get broken up. But with the way that they designed it as just this piece that's laying in the front, it kind of looks like a giant bib. And I can't get that image out of my head. It's like a giant bib or a really big dickie or something like that. I'm just not a big fan of how they designed this, and I'm really hoping that in the other Black Adam figures that are coming out, not even necessarily the movie, but the page punchers, I'm hoping that they came up with a different way of having that lay on his torso. At his wrists, he has his gold bracelets. his gold bracers that have some decent design work in there. I really like the gold coloring that they have on him. That the gold is really standing out against this matte black that they have. And then he has his belt, much like Aquaman. It kind of rides up high on his hip, but it's more straight in the back, dips down a little up front. And then he has his banded boots, which I really like the look of these boots as well. Now the bodysuit, while it's just plain black, I believe in the comics, they've sort of McFarlaneized it, that it has some texture, it has a pattern, it has a design. They took what could have normally been a very boring, bland, just base black body, and they've added a little something to it. Just a little something to make it pop. Nothing that is so out there that it's not recognizable as his comic look, but just enough that it gives it some character, gives it some definition, gives it some detail, just gives it something so that it's not a base black body. Now, going back to the head, he does, as you can see, he has some side eye that he's kind of looking off in that direction right there. So he's not going to look forward. He has some side eye going on, sort of like that. Sort of like, I'm going to kick your butt. All right. So that is Black Adam. All in all, for the first outing of Black Adam, which I think this is his first outing with McFarlane, it's not bad. There's plenty of room to improve, and I really hope that the next ones coming down the line are an improvement on this one. For accessories, of course, we have his stand. We also have his character card with an image of the figure and some digital background. So far, I think Green Lantern was the only one that was full-on animation. And then on the back, we have a bio of our boy Black Adam. And also for accessories, look at these power effects. How about that? How often do we get these with McFarlane Figures? Although I think we are starting to get them more. We've seen with some of the other figures that are coming down the line that I think we're going to have some more power effects coming out. And these just have little coils on them that you just sort of spin them around the wrists. You get the fists in there. Hook those behind the gauntlets. And there you go. He has his lightning effects. And that actually looks pretty cool. I'm really excited. I know it's something small, but I'm really excited to have these power effects right here, because even if you don't want to use them for Black Adam, you can use them for other stuff. You could put them on Dr. Fate. There's so much more you could do with these. So I'm really jazzed that we have these. And Black Adam comes with the last two pieces for our collect-to-build Frost King, and those are his big beefy legs right here. And you can see some good detail work, some texturing in the legs, just like McFarlane does with all the figures. He has some decent cross-thatching, cross straps on his boots right here. Once again, we have some white on the fur tops of the boots, but it disappears when we get to the back. This is really disappointing. I was really wishing that they would just carry that all the way around. And it would also have been nice to maybe get some coloring on these cross straps right here. But it is like a collect-to-build. It's a build-a-figure. So I get that they're not going to put all of that work into that detail work right there. But it would have been nice to have these colored in entirely. All right, here's all of our pieces. Let's get the Frost King together and let's take a look at him. All right, here he is, our Frost King completely built, and I'm going to be honest, with these spiky things, he was kind of painful to put together. Having to get your hands on them and really crank them in and push them into the joints, that like, especially with the arms and the wrists, and even some with the legs on this side, it was taking a bite out of me. Now, putting the tape measure to him, we can see that our Frost King stands to the very top of his translucent blue-green horns. He is 9 1/4 inches tall. Now going ahead and taking a look at the articulation, because we're not going to be able to get him much closer to the camera, just because of how big he is. His head will do a full 360 spin, which I was impressed with, that these didn't get hung up on his shoulder pads. He has some decent side-to-side tilt. He can look up, but his hair keeps wanting to push his head back down. He really can't look down too much, but he does have some good movement, especially some side-to-side tilt, thanks to that dumbbell joint underneath there. Now his arms will do a full 360 spin. They will also come up, and the shoulder pads kind of get out of the way, but they also kind of crowd his noggin right here, as you can see. Now, one thing that I don't like about this one is that it's only held on by that peg down in there. I mean, it's glued in, it's not going to pop out, but that sort of like is bearing all of the weight. And if you bend it too far out, it will want to stay like that. I've had to like sort of bend it back in on my own a few times. This one is the same way, but because the shoulder pad isn't quite so big, it's not nearly an issue. He does not have a dumbbell joint. He has single jointed elbows that come up just under 90, but they're hinge and swivel. You saw the wrists when we were taking a look at the arms, that the wrists will do a full spin and they'll crank in and out. He has, put your hands up. He has an ab twist, nothing in here. He can't really do a side to side. He can't really do a forwards or back. He's really just going to pivot on his waist right there. Now his legs, this sort of comes out of the way. His legs will come up to about there. His legs can get to 90, but then they're weighted down and pushed back down. His legs will come back. And they have double jointed knees with some decent travel for a figure his size. Ankles rock back, ankles rock way forward, and toe articulation. And he does have, whoops, that popped off. 1 second. Let me pop that back in. Okay, here we go. And so he does have a swivel at the hip in there that it turns in much better than it turns out. And as far as the connections go, the connections for the most part are pretty solid, but that's not the first time I've had his legs pop off. That I feel like either the peg holes are too shallow or the pegs aren't long enough, that there's not really a satisfying pop when I jam them up in there. Now, we have been looking at the sculpt as we were looking at the individual pieces, but when you put it all together, it really looks great. I love this shade of blue. I love the black masking around the eyes. I love this grimace and the painting on the teeth in there inside a black maw. This gray beard, these whiskers, the translucent plastic. All of this looks really good. They did a really good job on that face portrait right there. I like the detailing in the armor, and as I said before, I really like this sort of horned bear belt buckle that he has right here. Now, I still wish they would have carried the white all the way around because you do end up seeing it. Also, here's his cape. If you remember this from the very beginning of the video, I really wish this would have been painted in sort of like a white, like the rest of this stuff is right here. I think whiting out this fur would have added some nice detail to this cape, but also dig how this cape just sort of swooshes around his body like wind blown in the Arctic wind. I really like that. We have the fur bracers, and then we have these crystalline, the ice gauntlets on this side, fur up on this shoulder. The two asymmetrical shoulders, I think, is a really nice touch. And keep in mind, this was also very much the design from the comic right there. I really, really like the size and the build of this, well, collect-to-build figure. 9.5 inches tall. He's not nearly as big as he was in the comic, but he's a good size for the collection. He's not... The only other thing they could have done was sell this as a mega fig, and considering this is like not a very well-known, like, I don't know how many fans would have paid the $40 for a mega fig of the Frost King. So I'm really glad he did it in this collect-to-build, build-a-figure style. And as we saw before, the only accessory he comes with is this translucent greenish blue ice sword of his. And this is a big piece of equipment too for him. Now, this hand is a fist. This is his only gripping hand. So he can only hold it in this hand, and he can only hold it in one hand. But it does fit in there very secure. Oh, we even forgot to look that, like, they even detailed in some fingernails right there. So he does, let's back him up a little bit. So he does hold it very securely. And he looks good wielding it. Now, one problem with trying to stand him up is that this heavy plastic cape does want to weigh him back. So you kind of have to fidget with him a little bit. Sort of lean him forward a little to get him to stay in position. Lean him forward a little. There we go. To get him to stay in position. So I'm just going to line the whole team up right here so you can see how they size up next to each other. I'm not going to do individual size comparisons for all the figures because that would take up too much time, and this video is running long as it is. But I did want to get them all lined up here so you can see that they all are basically pretty much on the same eye level with some minor variances between them in the heights, and I really like that. Also, it gives you a chance to see how our Frost King back here stacks up compared to the rest of the figures, having a good 2 inches on him. I really like when McFarlane puts out themed waves like this. I liked it for Endless Winter, I liked it for the Suicide Squad movie, I liked it for The Dark Knight Returns. I'm really liking it for the Crime Syndicate series. I like when he puts out these themes. My only frustration is that it seems like he does just enough to hit what he feels are all of the main characters, but then leaves certain ones out. And by that I mean, with this line specifically, is Hippolyta. I really feel like not having Hippolyta in this line, Wonder Woman's mother, kind of takes something away from it. Because if you read the Endless Winter story, you know Hippolyta was a large part of that story. That her, Black Adam, and Swamp Thing all had a hand in the history of the Frost King. And it was really good. And I think you could have taken out John Stewart, the Green Lantern, and put Hippolyta in, or have Hippolyta be sort of like an offshoot figure, an offshoot character, the same way that Aquaman was. She doesn't have a collect-to-build piece with her. You don't have to get her to complete the line if you don't want to. But I think not having her, you really miss something as far as like the story that this set can tell has going for it. Now, as far as the figures that we did get with this set, I think they're pretty solid. My favorites are actually Green Lantern, even though I know I said we could take him out, and Aquaman. The two most basic ones, the two simplest ones, are probably my two favorite. I can't really get into that big lightning bolt bib that Black Adam is wearing, and having this version of Black Adam is only making me hope that the next versions coming out, whether it's the Page Puncher or whether it's the Black Adam movie figures, that it's just going to be better and a better representation of the character. The biggest disappointment for me is Wonder Woman. What they did with her waist and with her torso articulation, that she can't turn at the waist without looking like she's breaking in half. They really missed an easy fix there. That with that armor on, that rubber body that she has, they could have easily done something like what they do with their Witcher figures, where it would have just been like a rubber shell on a skeleton, and she could have had torso twist, torso articulation, ab crunch, whatever you wanted to give her. But as it stands, she really can't move her body, otherwise it's going to look like she's ripping in half, and in reality it may actually start to rip the figure in half because of how soft that rubber is. Batman just looks ridiculous. I'm sorry, that outfit just looks ridiculous. And that's not McFarlane's fault, that's definitely Warner Brothers. The Frost King collect-to-build figure I can really get behind. I really dig that guy. I'm really glad we got him. I think he looks great. I think his armor looks great. I think he could have benefited from a little bit more of a paint app, especially on like the fur of his boots and his skirting. But I really like him. He's a heavy figure. He's a chunky figure. He's a great collect-to-build figure, and I'm glad he was included as part of this line. Let me know what you think. Did you read Endless Winter? Did you like Endless Winter? What do you think of this roster of characters that we got for the Endless Winter lineup? Thank you for bearing with me for as long as this video was. I'm really trying to cut these videos down whenever I'm looking at these sets, but I just lose track of time. Sorry about that. But I do have something else coming up for us. I got it in the mail yesterday. It's pretty special, it's pretty exciting, and I can't wait to open it up, take a look at it with you, share it with you. So until then, my friends, play well, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, thank you for watching.